various people across grand and mighty spectrums of time and indeed the multiverse. And yeah, this video is going to be a little different. Because as you might have seen, this is a video about why capitalism isn't working. And there's kind of often a pretense in sort of political ideology that we can separate economic debate from social progress debate. And because of that kind of pretense, and also just kind of things that I've realized and that I think as like a person with a conscience I should like fucking cop to, I'm gonna just sort of lay some shit out on the line here. My name is Alexander Gordon Jahans, and basically, round about sort of 2016, I was churning out the videos, and they were shit. They were just unadulterated shit. And the reason they were unadulterated shit was that basically my life was imploding. In the sense of kind of I had left. I had sort of graduated university, and kind of basically the reason I had decided to take upon the name that I did was kind of to remind myself, hey, I can survive being fucking suicidal, because I basically thought that kind of certainly like the Christmas after sort of graduating would probably, like, there was a significant chance that I might kill myself then. So kind of basically throughout the entirety of 2016, I was basically, as far as I was concerned at least, kind of on my own personal like suicide watch to make sure I didn't fucking do anything. And I didn't even know half the shit that was gonna happen. Like, I got diagnosed with Kalman syndrome. And the way that happened, that involved 4chan getting involved. So already, like, internet trolls were enmeshed and thought they got to have a say in sort of very deeply personal problems of mine. And 2016 also being the year of Trump, and the year of the alt-right and Nazis, and I can't remember if it was actually 2015 or 2016, but around about that time, because I had a lot of time on my hands, I suppose it must have been 2016. I wrote a very terrible fanfic about a real like trans person, because kind of I was stupid, and like I wrote a scene that kind of it was wrong. Basically, it was wrong. There's still a little part of me that can understand why I did it, because essentially it was, here's this trans person that I know, wouldn't it be fucking awesome if they could just get the fucking help they wanted? And like literally the moment after the fanfic went live, the thing that I essentially wrote of this trans person gets the help they need, then basically happened of kind of the fans rallying around and crowdfunding to actually get them help. It's just that when you write a scene about a trans person getting a magic potion that kind of helps them, and you describe it poorly, and then it's buried in the middle of a very long, terrible fanfic that includes cannibalism because you want to ham-fistedly say eating meat is bad, then yeah, a lot of stuff gets lost, and it's just like, what the fuck are you writing? And what the fuck was I writing? Well, I was basically being fucking transphobic, and that then developed into its own drama, which I handled appallingly because I am stupid. You might be sensing a theme here. I'm stupid, in case you hadn't realised. I had also been basically around about 2015. I had also been kind of anti-feminist, and so yeah, basically what happened was a whole lot of people who, for various very justified reasons, were kind of edgy and angsty and on edge, and you know, wary of being upset and caught out by trolls. They see me blundering about, making lots of stupid mistakes, and oh, by the way, I'm also being followed by this loud mob of evil Nazi stalker trolls. So it got into a whole big mess, and it's now sort of 2018, and I am 5 months and 400,000 words into a incredibly long story that means a lot to me, because it's kind of because basically after everything blew up with that, I basically stopped writing for a bit, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a new continuity because I want to try writing fantasy and do something entirely different, sort of do a soft reboot sort of thing. And this story is kind of the story that ties back into the original sci-fi continuity, and it's also kind of a story which is, it's thematically about redemption, and like the villain is genuinely like monstrous in many different ways, and like I even go to the level of like literally having him frigidude, as in literally killing someone and stuffing their head in a fridge for their girlfriend, who is a main character, to find. I literally do that just to be like, they're bad. And this guy has kind of part of their evil character arc based on my own sort of descent into stupid madness myself. Because basically, yeah, I was a fucking douchebag. And stupid, and did not handle things well. And basically, I am now at the point now where, like, yeah, I got it entirely fucking wrong. Entirely goddamn fucking wrong. And that was not good. I mean, I sort of spent like 3 years sort of tearing myself apart, destroying myself over this, because kind of basically the last time that I managed to sort of bring myself back from the edge of sort of suicidal ideation and depression, it was through writing, and through writing about this character called the Farshnook. And then it was through writing about the Farshnook that I ended up destroying everything and losing my friends. And oh, by the way, that's when Donald Trump becomes president. Oh, by the way, that's when Brexit happens. Oh, by the way, that's when the trolls find out where you live. Oh, by the way, that's when the shit at home also really hits the fan, and there's stuff I can't fucking talk about. So yeah, it's been tough, and that's why I deleted the videos, and that's why I went to doing EDAs, because like if I am just talking about a fucking book that's fucking published ages ago, nobody gives a shit. But of course, that doesn't stop the fact that I've had dickhead after dickhead after dickhead popping up onto Google Hangouts, which I never look at, by the way, and I've literally found a setting which means I can just disable them, so that's never going to be a thing anymore. But like, that hasn't stopped dickhead after dickhead saying, oh, I'm going to name myself a special good name self, I'm going to find him, I'm going to target, find him. And like, I am aware that there is still this massive, like, that I don't see, but there is this massive stalker train of trolls, of Nazi, rapey, fucking alt-right trolls following me around online, and I'm still not in a good place. I'm really not in a good fucking place mentally, and like, there are reasons that I kind of, when I go out with my fucking headphones on, and I am just doing my own thing and not fucking interacting with the world, because the fucking world hurt me and I hurt the world, and like, that's a relationship that I'm not yet ready to start back up again. And part of this this feeling, this attitude of like, I hurt the world, it hurt me, I can't do this, has been this sense that, you know what, I'm a cisgendered white male, my perspective does not fucking matter. And part of it is kind of coming from the old anti-feminist perspective of, these people on the left are really mean. Oh, look at all these other people. Where do I fit in? And part of it is just me kind of, as a slightly more woken individual, being like, but seriously though, there are too many cis white fucking men. What the fuck kind of attitude do I have to give? Right? To the extent that, like, yeah, I'm writing an entire story about redemption, and then literally I kind of had a moment of like, fuck, the other day, because like, I was listening to the Farscape Friday podcast, which is a brilliant podcast, and they happened to talk about this episode, Mental as Anything, and they basically called out, hey, this episode is basically from the perspective of someone who did something horrible, and sort of their angst about it, and I'm like, well, fuck. because yeah, they weren't bringing it up to be like, yay! They were bringing it up to be like, and this is really uncomfortable, and we shouldn't be doing this. 400,000 words. I mean, okay, like, the actual hero female character doesn't fucking do anything bad. But still, it's kind of like, okay, I'm feeling very much like maybe I genuinely just shouldn't be writing and publishing, and I suppose that's kind of why, like, I am saying that, oh yes, I'm writing, but, oh, by the way, the first story was 50,000 words, the second story is 400,000 words, and also this is basically supposed to be part of a 10-story collection that is going to be published at some point together, maybe if I don't drop dead beforehand. So it's like, yeah, I'm a writer, but there isn't going to be anything written before before 2040, maybe. I don't know. But nevertheless, I do occasionally get the urge to do a video, and this is one of those videos, and I'm aware that I have already crossed 16 minutes, and this is the point when I get people very definitely going, your videos are too long. But fuck it. You know what? The alt-right already want me dead on a fucking stick, and I've just admitted that I have a whole lot of fucking problems as an individual among the left. So sod it. What's the one perspective I can bring to the world? Well, I am a regulated capitalist. I like capitalism. I believe in the free market. I don't trust workers. I don't believe they are inherently better than CEOs. I don't believe that profits are inherently a bad thing. I actually am quite strongly in favour of the idea of ownership. I think that copyright can actually be quite a good thing occasionally. And basically, I'm here to kind of say, yeah, I like capitalism, but it's fucking broken. And there are massive fucking flaws. And we can do our best to duct tape them and sort of like fix them and stuff, but there are really huge fundamental flaws right now that are just going to get bigger, and I'd like to talk about them, and I'm going to talk about them, and I feel like kind of this is an area I have the perspective to give, because you know what? The internet is full of angry cis white men telling people of colour, telling gay people, telling trans people, telling women how they should live. But no, this is me as a cis white man who has fucked up and who has hurt the left, saying, capitalists, I am a capitalist. The capitalism that we believe in is fucked up and broken, and we need to fix it. And I am going to talk about what's wrong, and maybe suggest some solutions that can be amended to crudely duct tape it back together. But as I say, there are certain fundamental flaws right now, and I'm gonna say this right now. Communists seizing the means of production will not fucking help you. That's part of the fucking problem with capitalism right now. So yeah, I think I'm going to go get a drink of squash, because even I, at this point, I'm surprised at how long this introductory part is, because this was supposed to be 2 minutes. It's now 20. I think I might ever so slightly have a little tiny problem with word inflation. Which is another thing we can talk about. So capitalism. What is capitalism? Now, I am going to state off right off the back. I am a qualified university graduate in creative and professional writing and film studies. So I'm about as qualified to talk on the internet on any subject as any other angry cis white man on the internet is to talk about anything. And that includes you, most of the fucking commenters. And of course, inevitably, there's going to be some cis white male troll standing behind a sock puppet account going, "Oh, dial!" Which is kind of why I kind of look suspect at people on Twitter who follow me, who are like, you know, all of these things that are like screaming, "I'm not 4chan, I'm not 4chan, look at me, I'm not, look, oh look, how left wing." Sure you're not, yeah. Also, sometimes I say the wrong words. Like, literally the brain just goes, could be that word, or it could be entirely the wrong word. Let's go with entirely the wrong word. Anyway. So, to understand capitalism, we are going to look at what came before it, feudalism. Because capitalism is a system. And I like systems. Because systems are ways of understanding things and processes and people and life forms, and they're complex, and if they are really successful systems, they can be self-perpetuating, and sometimes that can be very bad, sometimes that can just be kind of neutral. And capitalism is one of those systems that has always had some bad components, but was, once upon a time, the superior system, in that originally there was feudalism. And basically what feudalism said was that there were people who had power. And the reason they had power was that basically they were really charismatic and really big, and they had lots of friends, and those friends were really big and charismatic and had the ability to fight. And so basically what you had was people coming into positions of power because basically if you didn't do what they said, they'd bash you in the face. And over time, these people who start off being in positions of power because, hey, you're gonna do as I say, because if not, then me and my mates here are gonna come around and beat you up. They are now actually sitting in charge of armies, and the armies are sitting in charge of peasants, and basically the way it is now working is that it's like, well, if you don't do what I say, then me and my mates here aren't going to let you have some of the food and the taxes and the protection that we get from making sure that all these other people do what we say. It's a racket. Feudalism is entirely a racket. It's the peasant does what the soldier says, and the soldier does what the lord says, and the lord does what the king says, because if you don't, then, well, there's another lord, there's another soldier, there's another peasant, and indeed there's another king. You know, there's another person waiting to take the throne. And so the idea is that there is a very rough competition of rule, in the sense of, if you don't do your fucking job, then somebody else will come along and bash you in the face to make sure you're doing your job right. And even if you are king, there are going to be other members of your own family, or other people across the sea, or even just, other lords who are like, I say, that chap has a very nice life, I'd like to have his life, please. And they will come along and bash you in the face. And so, in comparison to feudalism, capitalism's pretty darned nice. It honestly really is. In comparison to straight up do as I say or we will give you a horrible, horrible time. It really is quite nice. And if you want an example of kind of how bad feudalism got, and I realised, this may not be quite feudalism era, but how bad things were in the past. Dan Carlin of Hardcore History did a 4-hour-long podcast called Painfotainment, talking about how basically the suffering of people has always been something that humanity has craved and flocked to, and it's kind of funny how we now live in the age of video games. Are they too violent? When kind of back in the day, we'd all flock around to watch, the local woman who aborted a child or whatever. I was about to say that's a mistake on my part. You can't abort a child, but actually no. I think literally one of the examples was that basically there were quite a lot of women back in the day who effectively had some sort of horrible postpartum depression or whatever, and it was like feudalism, so kind of their lives were very terrible, and if you had a child and you couldn't support it, then horrible death awaited, and it was very, very bad. And so kind of basically you would have young women who were put to death because they had killed their children in a fit of depression or whatever. That's calling it a fit of depression is kind of like saying genocide is a fit of the fit of being a little bit angry, a little bit hateful. Obviously, very, very different things. But suffice to say, the past was a very, very horrible place in many, many ways, especially if you weren't a cis white man. Which is why the new series of Doctor Who is going to be quite interesting, because one way or another it's going to be making a political statement. Even if they just decide to treat everything exactly the same, it's going to be a bit like, oh really? You get to do this, But yeah, feudalism was not nice. And then I am glossing over, hundreds of years of complex history and what have you, and things of barter systems and sort of commerce and trade wars and blah blah blah, right? But basically, in the kind of in the most asterisk filled, well, actually in history, the way you get from feudalism to capitalism is that you have essentially at a certain point these people in positions of power, because once upon a time, if you didn't do what they say, they'd kick your head in. And because, well, you want to get the goods they've got, right? Because the idea is that if you are going to have a large group of people you have to sustain, right? You have to distribute goods and services, right? Fundamentally, what we are talking about when we are talking about systems, when we're talking about feudalism, when we're talking about capitalism, when we're talking about communism, and bearing in mind, I probably understand communism less than I understand feudalism, and I don't really understand feudalism that much. Although, to be fair, there isn't really that much to understand about feudalism, or indeed about communism, because communism hasn't actually happened yet anywhere. But the thing with systems is that you need them because at a certain point you can't just rule by, if you don't do what I say, me and my mates are gonna smash you in the face. At a certain point you have to move things around. At a certain point you have got X number of people here, X number of jobs that need doing here, and I realise I'm talking about jobs, but like you have things that need doing. Okay? And it's like, okay, we need food to keep people alive. We need people so that they can fight off these invaders, so that they can build these walls so that we can be safe from the invaders, so that they can make the weapons to protect us from the invaders, so that they can work in the mines so that we have the weapons, so that they can work in the stables, so that they can work in the leather tannery, right? At a certain point, you have things around an area that need doing, and you need a way to encourage people to do them. And basically, the way it worked in feudalism was you do it because your family have always done it, because it's always been that way, and if you step out of line, someone will smash you in the face. And if they smash you in the face, you're probably having a good day, because they could be cutting your head off. And indeed, that in itself could be a lucky day if they just cut your head off straight away and don't proceed to spend like a good 5 hours trying and missing and hitting you left, right and centre and failing to actually kill you. Listen to that episode of Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. History was indeed hardcore and really not a lot of fun. And so, at a certain point in feudalism, you have people in power who are divorced from direct rule. Okay. And this is actually kind of a crucial point in, like, Rome. Okay. In Roman history, right. In that literally the moment that the Roman Republic starts to fall is with the founding of the Marian Legion. The Marian Reforms. And basically what the Marian Reforms does is introduce a sort of feudal commerce system, in that instead of paying soldiers to be a professional army with, well, here's a wage, here is food, you are paying soldiers to be in a professional army with, well, I will reward you with land taken when we go abroad, right? Basically, it's like if colonialism was mixed with communism, in the sense of like, come, comrade, join with us as we go on the Great Crusade. You too can get your own plot of land to work. And it's like, your Johnny Soldier goes off and is like, yay, I'm going to fight for the Senate and country. And he goes off, and then he's like, woohoo, I kicked in this other person's place. I get to live here. Woo. Or at least, you know, that's what they put on the campaign posters anyway. In reality, it's like, yeah, totally, you can get that land. If we get it. If you're alive. At some point. Maybe. But the idea is that kind of that starts the downfall of the Roman Senate, because essentially what the Roman Senate is founded on, the Roman Senate is founded upon the sort of feudalistic idea of you basically do as we say because we are smart people and we are in charge and you listen to us and we were very charismatic, and if you don't do as we say, we're gonna smash your face in. And at the same time, it's got this, in order to have a system that is large work, and bearing in mind a lot of the reasons that these systems worked in any way before kind of money came along, was that basically they were small. And so it's like, you know, it's Rome, the mighty city of Rome, that is literally just a city. Because the idea is that you don't want to be outnumbered too much, right? The idea is that you want you and your friends in the Senate to be able to convince enough other people to defend you from the other people that, you know, you can keep things in line, right? That's sort of the way things used to work. And part of the way that would work is that you would not have actually trained militia armies, right? And part of it was just that, you know, at a certain point in time, you literally didn't have the ability to have a professional army, because there literally wasn't the technology to sustain people whose entire job was just to stand around not working on the farm, or doing something that would help out with the farm. So, you know, at a certain point, you literally couldn't have a professional army. But and this is why, you know, history that's talked about beyond a certain point, the ones that are talked about are people with professional armies, are people with dedicated soldiers who aren't just like, well, you know, they work the fields most of the time, but when we need them, you know, we blow the horn and they show up, and they've got their local gear on, you know, they've got their hose and what have you, and we go out and they stand up and they stand there and, you know, whatever. And that's why you would have the phalanx of all these people deep, because the idea is that they aren't fucking trained to do anything except fucking stand there and wave a stick in the enemy's face and then vaguely walk where the other people are walking. So that the people who actually know what they are doing are the people who are at the back, so that they can steer it, sort of thing. Or at least if they're at the back, they can't see what's going on, so they have no reason to be afraid. They're like, of course we're going to merrily walk where we're told, because there's nothing wrong with this. Meanwhile, if you're in front, then you're like, I have no choice. I'm locked in here. I'm a little bit fucked. And so basically that's the way you would keep things in line, is that kind of you were the uber smart, super charismatic, capable people with all your uber smart, super capable friends, and that basically like your militia forces were actually basically a bunch of drunken farmers with poor equipment. And that, you know, the great big epic battles of yore were actually mostly poorly equipped militias with a bunch of like slightly snooty people taking all the stuff and being like, aren't I brilliant and enlightened? And really kind of they're just not. But the Marian reforms are basically the moment that Rome gets a professional army, and it's the moment that kind of you watch a society start to crumble because it doesn't really have feudalism anymore and it doesn't know how to cope. Because it's still feudalism, because it's still fundamentally soldiers, people getting paid so that they can work on a farm, right? You're getting paid because the man in charge says you get to work on a farm, and you do what the man in charge says, because if you don't, then, you know, his mates will come and shiv you. But you are still, as a, you know, soldier, doing a job in hope of a reward. Right. And so at this point, the Roman Empire starts to fall apart because, well, the Roman Republic starts to fall apart because essentially what you have is a whole load of local sort of generals or whatever who are leading these men, and basically the idea is that they will say, okay, you know, we're going to go over there, we're going to win these battles, and then you have some farmland. And, you know, this farmland, it is yours. Once the campaign is finished. Maybe, sort of, you know. And so basically what you have is the beginnings of essentially capitalism sneaking into feudalism and undermining it. Because suddenly it's not enough that you're in charge and that you have the pointed sticks. Because suddenly any person can rally their mates around them and say, look, I have this ability to generate this wealth for you. You want to come and do as I say. And so, you know, that's, you know, one very crude instance of sort of professionalized, you know, payment undermining things. But, you know, obviously, you know, barter systems at a certain point become a bit moot. Okay? At a certain point, you need a currency of exchange. Okay? It can't just be, we do this, this chicken is worth a hay bale or a thing of bread. You know, I mean, okay, I don't. This is a question that they, you know, ask politicians. I don't actually know the price of a loaf of bread. Maybe it's about like a couple of quid. I don't know. I certainly don't know the price of a loaf of bread as compared to a chicken in like feudal era Rome or whatever. But suffice to say, at a certain point, you need some sort of currency to compare stuff to. At least when it comes to you're the king and you have lords and they have armies, and like how the fuck does that work? Because you need a way to quantify, we need X amount of food to feed X amount of people so that X amount of people can go there to fight off Y amount of people so that we and so that we have X amount of people working these jobs so that blah, like the system has to work. How does the system work? And once you have currency, once you have a unit of exchange, once you have the concept of people getting paid to do a job with a wage, that's when capitalism starts to creep into things. Because fundamentally, that's what capitalism is. Capitalism is feudalism with a fucking wage. That's what it's always been. Okay. And there are things that I love about capitalism that are so much more than that. But capitalism began in feudalism. And feudalism clings through it because it feudalism is part of the foundations of capitalism. Because capitalism sprang from it. And so the idea is that, capitalism got involved at the edges. So that, yeah, you would have, like the essentially Julius Caesar coming to power because, look, men, you want to come and work for me because I have all this land. Because I am so popular, because the people love me, because if you let me be in power, if you come fight for me, if you come chant for me, if you come protect me, then, I will look after you. And, once upon a time, fascists got into power because they were actually popular. Trump isn't popular. Have you noticed that? Julius Caesar got into power because essentially the way he managed to steal power from the feudal lords was by getting it granted to him by the people. And that was what was scary about capitalism. Because capitalism allowed something other than feudal lords and do what we want, what we say, or we'll smash you in the face, to take over. Because suddenly it's, you want to do what I say because I can reward you with this. And yeah, that guy is going to want to come and smash you in the face. But if you're willing to risk him smashing you in the face, I can give you this. And once you have people willing to risk being smashed in the face for this, whatever this is, right? Then you have, well, you want to come and do what I say because, yeah, that guy might want to come and smash you in the face, but I have these people who will defend you, and if and you can come and work for me, and you can do this, which then I can use to reward other people by saying that if you come work for me, then we have this guy who makes this, and you can have that, right? And so capitalism undermines feudalism by basically saying we don't have to fucking fight. It's no longer do what I say or I'll beat you in the face. It's do what I say because I can give you something you want. Right? And yeah, like, as the episode of Paid Infotainment, the episode Paid Infotainment of Hardcore History points out, there was an awful lot of, do what I say or I'll punch you in the face or, cut you off at the neck, kill you in various horrible ways. But, the reason capitalism was different to feudalism was that capitalism was, I'll pay you. That's why capitalism was brilliant. That's why capitalism was amazing. That's why capitalism was a stunning thing. Because capitalism was about rewarding people. It wasn't about aspiration. It wasn't about hard work. It wasn't about the Protestant work ethic. It was about, you will be rewarded. You do this, you help us, we will get you the things that you want. Okay? And then it evolved further into not the capitalism we know now, because the capitalism we know now is broken, and I'm going to talk about that, but into kind of, I'm gonna, I suppose, talk about like a little bit about the Platonic ideal of capitalism. But first, I need to go and blow my nose because yes, I have problems. Namely called having a cold. So anyway, jump cut. Okay, so let's address some points because I am a fan of like a Platonic ideal of capitalism, which at this point I'm like has never actually existed. But kind of like I still had hoped for some time could be made to happen. I now don't think it can. But there is a kind of capitalism that I think once upon a time could have worked. The could have worked and been nice, but essentially the thing is that capitalism grew out of feudalism, as we have discussed. And that means it was basically built on off the backs of the already powerful. And as I say, it was this disruptive influence, right? And like Julius Caesar seized power because the people liked him, because Julius Caesar was the guy who brought the bread and circuses, sort of thing. Right. You know, remember when the idea was that people would give a shit about the poor? Yeah, remember that, right? But as a result of capitalism growing out of feudalism, it inherited the unbiased, it inherited the biased power structure. And like, basically, the reason that we have such entrenched racism and sexism in the world today is that basically feudalism doesn't work if you don't have the ability to pass on your lineage, right? And basically the reason that feudalism also can't work necessarily in a matriarchal society is that pregnancy knocks you out for 9 months of the year, and because basically until very recently pregnancy could kill you. So basically the reason that men end up in charge is that, hey, if you want to be the king, or, you know, the fiefdom or whatever, if you want to be the guy telling other people what to do, you gotta be a guy, because otherwise you're not gonna be so great at fighting, and oh, by the way, your whole job is to be surrounded by other people who can fight well. Right? Like, you know, it comes up all the time in classical stories that there is some young upstart challenger, and the hero, the guy in charge, you know, the person the stories are written about, who probably in real life was kind of a dickhead if he ever existed. He has to, you know, face this guy down and be like, look at me, I'm brave and strong, and, you know, I can smash you in the face, all the better. So, you know, how exactly would that necessarily work in a matriarchal society? Well, you know, if you want to pass on your lineage, you're gonna have to give birth, so that means you're gonna be out of action for 9 months. So that means that you've got to keep all of your people who do the slashing of the face on side when, oh dear, oh so sad, oh she died in childbirth, oh isn't it terrible, yay I get to be queen. So, you know, kind of, yeah, also genuinely men are shitheads, you know, that goes without saying. A lot of very terrible things happened and happen because men are shitheads, but I feel like fundamentally that's the reason why patriarchal societies tend to take the predominance over matriarchal societies, because kind of feudalism depends upon your ability to punch other people in the face better, at least in the early days, and you can't really, you know, punch people in the face better if for 9 months you're kind of a bit shitty at punching people in the face compared to your peers. And oh, by the way, your peers are the people most likely to want to punch you in the face and take your job. And also, oh, by the way, the baby is kind of the biggest threat to your life. Kind of, the men are lucky in that they get to have women creating the babies, so they get to control the women, they get to determine who the heir is through controlling what the women do, and they get all of the risk of childbirth and all of the risk of carrying the future heir on this other person, right? And so you have this thing of like, oh, my darling love, I want to keep you safe, so please go stay in my heavily fortified castle. But also stay far away from me so that when people come to, take us out, they kind of have to choose. Do they want to take out me and my armed guards, or do they want to take out my heavily armed fortress to get at my heir who will come and slit their throats, right? The reason you want to have kids, if you are the guy in charge in the feudal era, is because basically they are your insurance policy, right? The reason you don't shiv me is that my kids will grow up and they will come and shiv you, right? That's literally how these sorts of things worked back in the day of feudalism. And so if you're a guy, then you get to have future heir, future person in charge who will do the slitting of the throats of the bad guys, of the people who have killed you, safely far away from you behind protected walls. And also at the same time, if there is anybody who wants to be second in line for the throne and they don't want you having children, they're only going to take out your wife. They're not actually going to be shivving you, right? It's, if you had a matriarchal society, then it would be two birds with one stone, quite literally. And so, that's feudalism enforces sexism because of pragmatism, because it's based on who has power is the person who can shiv the most people in the face the most effectively. And then similarly, racism comes into that because literally feudalism is based on managing your borders. Feudalism is based on, I only want people here I can trust. So I'm only going to have people here who look like me. And this is why similarly things like homophobia and transphobia and, the fact that we didn't even know about autism until the 1950s and stuff like that come about. Because basically the idea is that if you're sort of feudal king, your chief worry is that the people are loyal to you. So once you have driven off people who are obviously different, once you have suppressed those troublesome womenfolk who might overthrow your ability to easily decide whose sprogs are whose, then you have the issue of, okay, but how can I ensure the people are loyal to me and they aren't going to backstab me? I need to make sure they're all kind of like me and that I understand how they think and feel. So therefore anybody weird is different and a threat and they need to be taken care of. And it's horrible and terrible, but it's a feudal system of like pragmatic sort of like boxes to tick if you want to be the guy in charge and not having your face smashed in. And because capitalism grows from that, a lot of the people who end up in charge of all of these factories or whatever inherit that racism, that sexism, transphobia, homophobia, blah, 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 blah. And by the way, I am actually autistic and bisexual. Just saying, like, I am not entirely the most privileged person in the world. Also, I have Kalman syndrome, so yeah, I have tits and I need testosterone injections. So, fun. Because I also get horrible slurs thrown at me, though not nearly as much as other demographics. So capitalism is kind of rotten from the core in terms of the fact that the people in charge are from feudalism, and feudalism is inherently fucking problematic and disgusting and sexist and racist and all this stuff. But the reason that capitalism is different is that capitalism is less do what I say or excuse me. So capitalism has this wrong, but it is the spanner in the works. Capitalism is what says, hey, we can offer an alternative. We are the competition. And this is where you kind of get the idea of the marketplace coming into it. Essentially, instead of it being things are decided by who can punch the most people in the face, it's things are decided by who can entice enough people over to their products. Okay. And fundamentally, literally, the free market is based on the idea of commerce, of a marketplace, of stores succeeding or failing on the basis that they have the goods that meet the demand of the people. And that, there is more demand, and that there is that essentially you make profit off the fact that there is a lot of demand for something you can get hold of easily, and that if something is not able to be gotten hold of easily, people need to pay more money for it. Capitalism is fundamentally about I will reward you and pay you and give you something for doing what I want. Capitalism is fundamentally about charity. It is about being kind to people. Instead of punching someone in the face if they don't do what you want, it's about saying, do what I want and I will help you. I will give you something. Do what I want and I will offer this to you. And that's why it's revolutionary, and that's why there is something great about it. And that's why it enables democracies to fucking happen, because and that's why it enables civilizations to grow, really, right? Because once you have money, people aren't working directly because I'll punch you in the face. They're working because, well, you want to keep food on the table. You want, and that's not a threat, right? Compare it to feudalism. For feudalism, right? Feudalism, you want food on the table, you have to go out and work the fucking farm. And you're lucky if you get any food at the end of working on that farm. With capitalism, it started out as, you work for me and you will be able to have food on the table, as in literally, I will pay you so that you don't have to go out and work on the farm. If you come to work for me as a soldier, then you will have food without working. And hey, I've got all these soldiers. So if you come to work for me, they will defend you. So you want to go and work on the farm because you can work more time on the farm and keep more for yourself, because there isn't everybody else doing it. And, capital, the idea of capital that everybody so reviles on the left, it's fundamentally, right, if you create something and then you give it to other people for them to enjoy, then you deserve to kind of be rewarded for that. Right? You're making available a good or a service. You deserve to have payment for that good or service. That's the fundamental way that it's revolutionary. That's the fundamental way that it's good. And that once you have this idea of payment being the deciding factor, once you have the idea that suddenly it's not about how much I'm going to punch you in the face compared to the other guy, but it's about what I can offer you over the other guy. Suddenly, you have marketplaces that are full of people offering better quality goods or better priced goods. You have politicians who are offering more rights and more democratic power because they're like, hey, I will do this so that I will have money and it will and I will be better than the other guy. It's not a bunch of, sort of rich people talking to their richo friends. Well, okay, let's be honest, it always kind of has been, always kind of will be, but like it's not as bad as feudalism was under the Senate system or whatever, right? And once you have capitalism, then you are divorcing power from might. You are making it possible for power to be about benevolence. You are making it possible for someone to be in charge because they are kind, because they are good, because they are good at connecting people with resources, because they are capable of realizing, hey, this person has these skills, which to them are very easy to do. This person needs these skills, which to them are very desperately needed. Connect them together, then you can use that and that and that and that, and then you have a system whereby people are doing things that they like and they are creating benefits to society. And once you have competition of commerce, then you can have competition politically. And not just in a which feudal lord am I going to worship? Well, worship's probably a bit much, Which feudal lord am I going to, swear fealty to? It's now a case of which politician do I like the sound of most that I want to back them. And this is where revolutions start to come into things because, again, right, once you get professional armies, suddenly you have to start treating them properly. Because capitalism brushes up then against a little bit of feudalism, which is that it isn't quite good enough to say, well, I can offer you all these good things, because then you will have people say, yeah, well, that's all well and good, but what about these other problems I have? And you can very well stand there and say, well, I don't really care about those problems, because look, I'm still offering you a better deal than the other guy. But once you've given people a bunch of pointy sticks and they outnumber you, they might go, well, maybe I want to help my friends not be shivved over in this way, and maybe I want to shiv you over with this shiv that you've just given me so that I can shiv those other guys. So shiv, right? And this is where kind of unions come into it, right? Unions have always been at the foundation of capitalism, because unions are basically the collectivized workforce saying, yeah, capitalism, good proposal you've got there. I have a counter proposal, which is that me and my chums don't like what you are saying, and either you listen to us or we will fight you. Da-dum. Right. And essentially what you have with the unions is essentially the feudalism of the common people. In the sense of, yay, congratulations, capitalism, you have disrupted feudalism and you have successfully brought money into it so that you can offer a grand and golden opportunity. But oh, by the way, people are still people, and they are still fundamentally going to decide who is in charge because, well, he's really big and charismatic and I'm quite scared of him. And so you have these people who create support to fight back and put pressure upon companies, put pressure upon politicians, put pressure upon kings. And this pressure bubbles up in things known as revolutions sometimes, and in riots, and in bad things. But it also creates a lot of very awesome and good and brilliant and amazing things, right? Like, yeah, we wouldn't have, the 7-day, we wouldn't have the weekend, we wouldn't have all of these, paid sick leave and all of this stuff. I mean, I must admit, it feels a little like we wouldn't have all these things that we don't really have anymore, if not for unions. But also, we wouldn't have these things if not for capitalism, right? Do you think the fucking peasant has, like a weekend? Do you think the peasant has paid sick leave? Do you think the peasant has maternity leave? Do you think that happens? Genuinely, like, capitalism is so much better because it enables the working people to have power. Because the moment that you say, okay, we are going to run a system off the idea that everybody deserves to be given something in return for their goods or services, then suddenly you are literally saying to the worker, you have value. You have value as an individual, to me, the powerful person. And so maybe suddenly the worker goes, oh, so me and my friends, we can get together and we can cause you to have less power. And maybe you don't want that to happen, so maybe you're gonna look after us better. Unions have always been a part of capitalism's success. And capitalism forgets that. But also unions are part of capitalism. And yeah, the reason why fucking communism failed in Soviet Russia is it's the Soviet Union. It is literally the Union. It is the outgrowth of capitalism. I say, why did this organization founded by the feudal reaction to capitalism devolved into a feudal form of capitalism. I fucking wonder why. The seeds of capitalism grew from feudalism, and it is the seeds of feudalism that fight back against capitalism and create all of these awesome things that we love. Or at least, if we're sane and decent people and not far-right, alt-right dickheads. And this is where you get the idea of the economy and market forces and yeah, the idea that the way business gets done is that you have competition, and the person who provides a better good or service or a cheaper good or service wins. Okay. And the idea is that you have unions so that you can't just provide a better good or service by mistreating people. And it's here that we kind of need to get into late capitalism. And where I believe that capitalism is now fundamentally broken. And that there are some ways that it maybe can be fixed, but that things are bad. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to shock you right now, because this is the part of the video that I actually know stuff about. Because I've read some books on it, and indeed I have some reference material, as it were, to kind of offer to let you have a let you know what I know, sort of thing. So what I will recommend is kind of two books by cis white men who are middle class and English and write for The Guardian, and yeah, they're basically very much alike. Let's be honest. Like, well, not very much alike. Like, I don't want to be like all of my sort are exactly alike. But let's be honest. I'm sticking a little to type here, aren't I? But I want to recommend Owen Jones's The Establishment and How They Get Away with It, and Paul Mason's Post-Capitalism. And I'll be talking about another book in a moment, because I'm literally looking at it right there. Primarily because I'm a lazy arse and I haven't actually typed it away yet, despite the fact I read it like a year ago now. Or over a year ago. But what I will just say is that, but before I get much deeper into this, is that the reason this is called Capitalism Isn't Working is that basically the moment capitalism falls is the moment Margaret Thatcher rises. And this isn't me bringing out my anti-feminist cap. This is me pointing out where capitalism begins to fall. Which is that if you read Owen Jones's The Establishment and How They Get Away with It, and Paul Mason's Post-Capitalism, what basically is made clear is that with the defeating of the unions by Margaret Thatcher, and obviously in America they had their own similar kind of thing going on with sort of Reagan, and essentially what you have is a conservative or Republican regime that takes over, squashes the unions, and then you have and then you have the supposed left-wing success that quietly destroys any hope of saving capitalism by saying, no, 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 what the other people did, we're just going to stick with that and continue it because, yeah, that's the only way to be in power anymore. And that basically, once you demolish the left, capitalism is fucked. Because capitalism became capitalism because of the unions. Capitalism became what it is because of the unions, right? You look at communist Russia, and communist Russia is capitalism incarnate. To the extent that it basically did what America is now doing, right? In the sense that capitalism is entirely just unions. In the sense that communist Russia was entirely just unions. It is the Soviet Union, the Union, and it very swiftly falls to fascism because and fails and goes bankrupt because you can't have one without the other. You can't have this reaction to capitalism without capitalism, and you can't have capitalism without unions. You need these two forces in balance, right? You need the yin and the yang to be balanced, and that's cultural appropriation, and I'm sorry, but, matter and antimatter, protons and electrons, you need balance. And now I am reminded of the fact that, before I deleted my videos, I was the one guy who liked the Phantom Menace, and how basically the Phantom Menace predicted Donald Trump. Because of course, Anakin, who would bring balance to the Force. And all the smartasses saying, well, he did bring balance to the Force because he wiped out all the Jedi. No, that's not what they were talking about, jackasses. It was a spiritual balance. But, the establishment and how they get away with it, and post-capitalism, are about that they chart basically the beginning of this downfall and decline with the Margaret Thatcher era. And this is where I have to point out just how much actually I am sort of, well, I'm not really in the closet so much as it is like I am an old, I'm sort of core conservative in the sense of like, if the Conservatives actually did what I feel the Conservatives should do, which is to actually stand for the fucking economy and not stand for the bullshit that they are, then I would probably like them. In the sense that I love capitalism. I do. I wish it could be saved. I don't think it can, but I do love capitalism. And so when I read these passages by these very left-wing people about how Margaret Thatcher in the Battle of Orgreave defeated all these miners, there's a little part of me that's like, yeah, capitalism, whoa, yeah, smash them, yeah, Thatcher, hey! And it's just very sad knowing that actually this is what kills capitalism, right? It's kind of like listening to Hamilton and being like, yay, Alexander Hamilton, he's won the war, he's gotten America, woohoo, and like, yeah, he's the Secretary of the Treasury, yay, woohoo. This is the moment when it all starts to go tits up. Okay. Yeah. You're very happy, I'm very happy for Margaret Thatcher in that moment doing this terrible, terrible thing because yay capitalism, but at the same time it's like, no, poor capitalism, you fucked it up, you stupid woman. And I'm just saying it because, you know, she was stupidly fucking up capitalism and she happened to be a woman. My own latent issues with misogyny aside there. Because, yeah, let's face it, I am interested in textual analysis and I have written an awful lot of writing that has got an awful lot of submissive women in it and not a lot of main characters who are women. So, yeah, I have problems. But anyway, enough about me being a piece of shit. Let's talk about capitalism dying. Once you squash the unions, then you squash workers pushing back against the fucking over of the economy. Okay, because let's be clear, automation has always been a thing in human civilization, right? Like, automation was taking place during feudalism. It wasn't happening at the same pace, and like technology would be lost because basically what you'd have is a new king who would come to power and he'd be like, well, I don't really trust you people, so bash, bash, bash. And like back in the days before, you know, books or whatever, once you kill off the old people who have the knowledge, they can't teach it to younger people, so therefore it's lost, right? And because even if they have taught it to the younger people, well, what else might they have taught the younger people? So they better get bashed in the head as well. But once you have technology, then change happens rapidly. And so, basically, in the beginning of the 1950s, you have, in fact beforehand, because obviously, you know, the Great War, World War One, is all about warfare being radically changed and how the fuck does this work anymore. But that was mechanization development. But in the sort of 1940s, 1950s, that's when you get the first computers being built. And once you have the first computers, that's when the first technological change really starts to take place. But it's not until the 1980s that the computer becomes the personal computer. It's not until the 1980s that the information technology revolution starts trundling along. Okay, so in the 80s, what you have is the personal computer exists now, and at the exact same time, the unions are squashed. Well, not the exact same time, but in the same decade, that's what happens. And then in the 90s, we have the internet, and the left wing comes along, and it's actually taken over by the right wing, and it promptly destroys any left wing opposition that would restore the power of the unions, and that would pose a serious threat to the undermining of capitalism. Because there has always been automation. Always. Right? The industrialization era of Britain, which is talked about in An Inspector Calls, unlike, you know, the cotton mills and what have you, that happened with basically people being like, and Paul Mason talks about this a little in Post-Capitalism, being like, the reason that you have this constant push-pull of capitalism always wants to find new markets to expand out into. You know, it's Marion saying, "Hey, you can get you soldiers can work for us if you go out and you conquer more land." Except it's like you now need to conquer new markets in capitalism. You need to entice new people to buy your shit. But at the same time, there are two ways to kind of there two free ways to offer to make money in capitalism, right? If you can't conquer a new market, you either make your product better for the same amount of money, so therefore more people want to buy your product over the other product, or you make your product cheaper. And there are two ways to make your product cheaper. You can either find a way to do it cheaper and more efficiently using automation and technology and outsourcing and what have you. And let's face it, if you're using the internet and computers to allow one person to do the job of 5, to allow one person in a poorer country who gets paid less to do the same job that somebody could do in Britain, that is technology taking away a job. That is not people in that other country, right? Because fundamentally, right, if technology didn't enable that job to be done from another country, then they would have to pay you the wage, because otherwise you would strike. Or there would be laws or what have you. And the reason those laws would be in place is because otherwise you would, like capitalism made this system come about, made these sets of laws come about, and then technology comes along and says, yeah, but you can do it cheaper. But if you can't do it cheaper through finding a technological solution, you can do it cheaper by finding a lazy way around things, right? Which is that, well, men are used to being paid well, so we'll pay women, so we'll pay children. And so basically what we're having at the moment is the decline of capitalism and the rise of identity politics, because, all right, automation is taking place, and we're going to talk about automation, because it's I think the elephant in the room that is fucking destroying capitalism. But what you can do with identity politics is that you can look very, very, very progressive while saving yourself a lot of money. Right? So we have this core problem in society of sexism left over in capitalism from the days of feudalism. Okay? And so we are now in this period of late capitalism where we have the worldwide internet. We are actively searching for other life. There is no other life. We have captured the global market. The global marketplace has been captured. Woohoo, right? Awesome. That means that there is no new place for capitalism to expand into. And yeah, technology is taking place, but technological automation is like, at this point, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's happening so very, very fast that kind of you can't rely on it to help your company be better. Unless you are literally a tech giant whose entire business is tech, you are someone who kind of can use it to help you but you cannot rely on it to be better than the other person, because there will always be new technology. Because basically, if you are a big company, by the time you have the new technology installed in all your systems, it's out of date. So you have to find other ways of doing it. And so you have this inherent sexism in the system of based on feudalism, of, you know, not enough women in the workforce. You also have this thing that, because of the inherent sexism of the system, men had stronger unions because there were more of them in work, and therefore when they decide to strike, you paid them more. And basically the way capitalism works is you pay people what the market says you can get away with paying them. If there are less women in work, then they are more desperate for work. Therefore, you don't need to pay them as much. And also, if there is a perception that, well, this demographic can just not need to work in the first place, then you don't, there's not competition, right? A busy working man who doesn't get your job will go work for a competitor. A busy woman might go away and get married. Some sexist guy might think, right? So you don't need to pay them as much. And there's this weird double-edged sword that takes place of, once you start publicizing, you know, the underrepresentation of women in the workplaces and the fact that they aren't actually paid as much, capitalists start realizing they aren't actually paid as much. And suddenly, that's one way you can balance the books, is, hey, look, we're hiring more women and paying them exactly the same as we did before to save money. Yay! And you can, like, distract people with shiny things and say, oh, look, we're doing gay pride and we're doing trans rights and Black Lives Matter. Meanwhile, we're still being an evil company exploiting people. And this is where the virtue signalers are the fucking companies. The white knight virtue signalers are the evil capitalist companies that are like, they can't compete technologically. There are no new markets to conquer. All they can do is try to pay people less and try to make people happier with the products they already have and already know. Okay, so we literally live in the era of the meme wars, of the idea wars, of being bombarded with information, of literally social media, of media that is social, that is connected to everyone. We are, in a weird way, the Borg right now, in that we are this interconnected hive mind of outrage and anger, constantly saying, this person is bad, no, this person is bad, this thing is really good, bad, bad, good, bad, bad, good, bad, good, bad, right? And there are all sorts of studies saying, this is fucked up, what the fuck are we doing? And none of us are logging off. We're not doing it. Right? We all know at this point it's fucking bad, it's evil, they're spying on us. We're still here. We're still here. We know! I literally have a toothpaste box that I keep over my webcam when it is turned off. Still have a social media account. Still have YouTube. Still still have Twitter, still have Tumblr, still have my own blog. We know all of these things about how fucked up our world is. We're not doing anything about it. And that's why, in a way, this whole... Okay. I know it sounds like I'm having some really dramatic, deep thought, but no, I just literally got a bit of a sore throat because I spend most of my time just sort of silently writing whilst pacing and listening to music. I do actually worry sometimes, like, how creepy I look from the outside. Just because, like, I've reached this point now where I am that sort of autistic that I'm kind of sensitive to light. So I like to, and my sleeping pattern is just kind of screwed up anyway. So I will be up at like, 1 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. in the morning, and I will just be quietly pacing around the kitchen at night in the dark, listening to headphones as I think through my stories. And there's kind of always a little bit of me just like, this probably looks a little bit like a villain in a horror movie. Maybe this isn't such a hot look for me. But anyway, I'm not meaning to make any sort of dramatic pause out of, social media. But there is an awful lot of buzz nowadays about how politics has been polarized and how you can't say anything if you're a conservative comedian, and how it's all, people are constantly complaining on Tumblr about how shows are not allowed to just be, they're not allowed to fuck up anymore. You're not allowed to have a show with a bad episode. It's either the most perfect show ever, or it's really bad. Or it's made weird. It's fucked up. It's bad. It's terrible. And, for all that I am talking about how this is rubbish, I have literally spent like 3 years in existential crisis because a piece of fucking fanfic I wrote online upset about 700 people. Right. But it was 700 people that I fucking liked, right? And it was my friends, so it mattered. I wasn't annoyed that, a bunch of people on the internet said that this thing was terrible. I was annoyed that my friends had a problem with what I did. There's a difference. But that people do talk about how media is polarized nowadays and politics is polarized. It's not. It really isn't. There is no polarization. The Overton window shifted so far to the right that basically people saying, don't fucking kill us, we don't want to die, is seen as some radical statement. And so, yeah, people are fucking angry. Meanwhile, if you are on the right, then you've won. Congratulations, you live in your far-right dystopian hellland. Hey! Clap, clap, right? You don't get to sit back and lie on your ass, right? Yeah. Surprisingly, if you are someone who is supporting the status quo that is destroying capitalism, destroying the economy, destroying the actual fucking planet with climate change, that is actually killing people because, black kids are getting shot dead on suspicion of stealing a chocolate bar, because women are getting raped and murdered because trans people can't use the fucking bathroom or they're gonna get shot dead by fucking Republican Christians. America is a dystopian hellscape, and Britain's fucking itself up the arse with bloody Brexit. The world's not doing so hot because of capitalism, because of late capitalism. And we're talking about how everything is polarized. It's not. It really isn't. Here's the thing, social politics is a fucking distraction because we already fought a war about whether it is right to kill all the people you don't like. It was called the Second World War. The people who thought it was a good idea to kill all the people you don't like lost. Similarly with the Civil War, right? You don't get to go and say that you want to kill everyone you don't like. You might think it is a valid opinion because, well, it's just my opinion, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. You just don't. We know this. There is historical precedent. You're a moron. Right? What we are witnessing now is a massive distraction from the fact that capitalism has swung too far to the right. The economy is failing. The planet's climate is fucked. And we're all kind of a little bit terrified and don't know what's going on. And that's why the only kind of politics that is being talked about is social politics. Because it's like we've kind of given up on the idea that we could actually do anything about the economy. Because Barack Obama was a right-wing politician. He might have done some stuff that wasn't as fucked up as the right wing wanted to do, but he was a right wing politician. But he was black. And that changed things. And Theresa May is literally a conservative politician who was not elected. And who, when she called an election thinking that she would have it in the bag because everybody hated Corbyn, or at least the press said everybody hated Corbyn, she kind of had to remain in power by literally bribing a bunch of terrorists. So, and that's not hyperbole, by the way. Literally, the way that she remained in power was by forming a supply and a confidence and supply deal with a very, very tiny party in Northern Ireland that had literally committed terrorist actions and backed terrorists. It was kind of hilarious at the time to watch this election take place and the fallout, to see this woman who had been seen so confidently as to be like, I'm going to get a landslide, and you could almost see her as like General Melchett saying, and what part of Normandy shall I carve up for myself this time? Da 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 da. How do we distribute the spoils once I have soundly defeated the Labour Party once for all? Da 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 da. And then it's like literally every single smear campaign against Corbyn came true for Theresa May. And it was kind of faintly glorious. Right down to the coalition of chaos, backed by terrorists. All this stuff. Sorry, little tangent there, but let's face it, I'm me. There are little tangents everywhere. But, you know, we aren't actually seeing any change to the political status quo, to the economic status quo. To the extent that there are literally women within the Labour Party who have written lots of very angry pieces because they are Blairites, who are basically right-wing people within the Labour Party who want to undermine and destroy capitalism further, destroy the economy further, and therefore Britain's chances on the world stage further. I mean, of course, they entirely believe they want to do the right thing, you know. So did Voldemort. Only I can live forever, Harry. It's just the only way. Can't you see? It's just sense. Probably shouldn't actually compare women to Voldemort, considering the actual closest comparison to Voldemort is Mr. Grab 'em by the pussy himself, Donald Trump. Just thought I had to clarify there in case any incredibly stupid alt-right people decided to make any stupid jokes. Which they will do, because they're the fucking alt-right, and that's kind of how they're typified. But there are literally, you know, women within the sort of conservative right of the Labour Party who are writing think pieces saying, oh great, a cis white man wants to do left-wing things for the Labour Party. Well, how like a man, isn't that so typical of him? Look at him with his really successful mandate. Yeah. Which is just like, it's just so conservative whining. Like, but I wanted equality while I was fucking over the poor and making money off of their expense. How dare you? How dare you want to save people in general? You know, it's a jackboot stomping on a human face for all eternity. It doesn't matter what fucking colour or gender or sexuality that fucking jackboot is. And that's why that's why social politics is the only thing being discussed. And unfortunately, social politics is the most vitriolic, because yeah, fundamentally what you have is women saying we don't want to get raped and killed, black people saying we don't want to get raped and killed, trans people saying we would like to just fucking exist please and not be murdered and treated horribly, and can we please have treatment for depression at the same time as, you know, help with being trans, and all this stuff is going on that is just people saying, can we just not be fucked over by society please? Meanwhile, the other side is just, no, fuck you. We like being in charge. We like having everything our way. Fuck you. And those people are cis white men. So it's us. It's people like me. And it's all a distraction from the fact that late capitalism doesn't know what to do about the fact that information technology is now a runaway juggernaut that isn't going to fucking stop. Because here's the thing, guys. We don't need Moore's law to be solved. Okay. We don't need Moore's law to remain true forever, is what I mean. You know, we have reached a point now where there is enough technological innovation in place that just the accruing of technology and software and understanding that we already have would change the world so much, right? We already have the robots to do the vast majority of the jobs, right? And the thing is that when you talk to people on the left and the right about automation, they say, but there will always be jobs, and they will name this job, that job, this specific job, and they will say this one job is very, very hard to automate, and most of the time they're actually speaking bollocks. But even if they weren't, you can't actually run an entire economy of people doing this one specific kind of job. Okay? Right? Like, yeah, there might be 10,000 jobs in the world that can't be automated away. 7 billion people, though. And that's the fundamental issue. is that at a certain point, capitalism is going to become irrelevant. And capitalism is kind of becoming irrelevant more and more now. And the thing is that technological automation is quietly chugging away along in the background. And in a way, the fact that technological automation is quietly chugging away along in the background is why we haven't noticed anything going wrong. Because here's the thing. We have reached a point in late capitalism where the unions are so weak and the people in charge have so little regard for the workers that the people in charge are paid so many ridiculously times more than the workers that companies are going bankrupt when literally all they would need to do is to sack one CEO or pay them minimum wage, and the people who are actually making the company run would be able to remain employed and the company would remain afloat. But instead, the company goes bankrupt and all of those people lose their jobs. That's the age we live in now. We live in an age where what used to incentivize people to come and work for you, to come and provide goods and services, to add value to your company, is now incentivizing you as the runner of that business to destroy your own fucking company out of stupidity. And this is destroying the economy. And we aren't noticing that the economy is a fucked up hellscape of a mess. Because technological automation is ensuring that the companies that do remain are keeping the food on the shelves, are keeping more or less the oil, in the tanks. And like, the world keeps turning. We have reached the age where technology is quietly undermining capitalism, whilst capitalism goes haywire. And we're still just talking about capitalism and communism. Here's the thing, guys. Yes, you need strong unions in capitalism. But there is going to come a point very, very soon indeed, and it might even be the case now, when you can't just give the workers power because the workers will themselves be a privileged elite. And this is why I get angry at communists now. Because it's not enough to seize the means of production if you do not have the means of production be publicly owned. You need a democratically controlled government to own these resources, or else you are just swapping one unelected member of an elite for another unelected member of an elite. Now, yeah, our political system is fucked up. And it's getting more fucked up as the people in charge are themselves resorting to the capitalistic take of, well, you can either expand into new markets or you can do a better job, which they can't do, or you can remain in power by cheating, And basically the way that these right-wing companies that are fucking over the people are remaining in power is by basically saying we want to make the people who disagree with us not be able to vote. Which means that basically the Conservative Party is saying poor people can't vote anymore because if you can't afford a passport or an ID card because, you know, you're busy working or you don't have enough money, then you can't vote. And therefore they cut down on the amount of poor people being able to vote, and therefore they hope to undercut the likelihood of Jeremy Corbyn and a radical, real left-wing alternative to the Conservative Party getting it. They're cheating. What we are witnessing is the death of capitalism. Capitalism isn't working, and something is going to come along and replace it. And it's not going to be fascism, because fascism always fails, because you can't return to feudalism anymore. And that's what fascism is. Fascism is feudalism by another name. And we are long past that. And any right-wing dreams of neo-feudalism are doomed to failure as well. We are entering post-capitalism. And it is here that I would cite another book, The Rise of the Robots by Martin Ford. And I would also cite the video Humans Need Not Apply by C.T.P. Gray. The world is changing. Capitalism is not working. And we could do so much more to fix it. And what I would say is, yes, we do absolutely need to push for better representation. We need to push for strong left-wing opposition. We need to push for the unions to be stronger. All of these things will help strengthen the power of the worker, will help strengthen the amount of money flowing into the economy, will help counteract CEOs stupidly shutting down their businesses and ruining the amount of money going into the economy by destroying the amount of job opportunities there are. But I don't think capitalism can be saved. I think something else is going to come along and replace it. I don't know what that is. And all of this Donald Trump and social progressivism, it's all just smoke and mirrors as far as I'm concerned. And at the same time, it is very important smoke and mirrors because it is literally a debate between people who want to stop being killed and people who want them to die. And I know that I am very much on the side of people who want to stop being killed, even if those people have the ability to destroy me intellectually and psychologically. Yeah, kind of a little bit fucked. And that's really why I'm not saying much, because what I have knowledge in is capitalism. And capitalism's dying. Capitalism's irrelevant. This is the age of talking about social progress. And what I know about is fascists. And guess what? Everybody knows about fascists. They're fucking evil douchebags. And there's no debate to be had there. There's nothing interesting to be said there. And I can't speak for what it's like to be a trans person. I can't speak to what it's like to be a woman, to be a black person. I can't even speak to what it's like to be gay because, you know, I'm bi, and actually I'm very much one of these bi guys who is very, very interested in women. So I don't even feel like I can talk about autism, because basically what I've come to the conclusion is nobody fucking knows anything about autism, because autism is too fucking recent for anybody to know anything about autism. We don't even know necessarily that autism really exists. We basically know that we have a label for a group of people who are vaguely sort of similar in a number of different sort of ways. And we know that we should help them, and we want to help them. And we know that they need money to be helped. And we know that if we listen to them, then we can help them by listening to them. But beyond that, we don't have a clue. So, like, I can't play the Martyr Olympics. I can't talk about being an oppressed demographic. My opinion is not relevant. But guns are bad, and capitalism is broken. And I don't think capitalism can be fixed. I'm hoping that Jeremy Corbyn can apply some damn strong duct tape to it. But I think we might be a little bit fucked.